Good evening. We are going to go ahead and get started in just a minute here. We're waiting on a couple more people that I see signing in. But thank you so much for each of you for coming out tonight. I am Dr. Jenna Woodland. I'm the superintendent of Evergreen Park School District. I am currently in year 5 of my superintendency here, and I'm just so humbled and honored to serve as the superintendent. A little bit about me: I'm a teacher at heart. It's who I am, it's what I believe in, it's my everyday why, and I wake up each and every day to serve a community that I believe in, and that just happens to be Evergreen Park. So I know each of you are coming out tonight because you are just as invested, and I want to emphasize up front that this is not a me decision, it is a we decision. It is a decision that is made by the community for the community, and I will walk you through what that process looks like. It is our role and responsibility today to provide you all the information that you need to make an informed decision for yourself. So I'm going to start with some introductions. So first of all, we have Rachel Mariquin here. So Rachel is one of our school board members. Rachel also happens to have one child in the district, and she is at Central Middle School, and then she just had one graduate last school year. Rachel is also an educator herself, and she's also the union president in her district to which she teaches. So she has a lot of areas of expertise that she brings to the board and the community. And so we're so happy to have Rachel serve in this capacity. Yes, yay! It's a big job being a board member, and it's also voluntary. They do it all for free. They don't get any other ramifications for it. So next we have Eric Grossi. So Eric Grossi is our director of finance, and Eric Grossi started with me. He's also in year 5. You can give him a little bit of a hard time because he's also a Sox fan. So depends on what you believe in, but we keep him around because he's very good at his job. Eric has done an exceptional job getting the district's finances back on track here. And so I'm super proud of that and super proud of the work that we've done. So when we started here, we only had about 2.5 months in reserves or in our savings account, which the State Board of Education actually recommends 6 months. And that's in the event of a rainy day. And so to date, we currently have about 7.5 to 8 months in reserve. So we're really proud of that, and that we're able to still continue to educate our children appropriately. Next we have Peter. So Peter is with our architect firm, so DLA Architects, and he's one of our lead architects on our project. He comes with many years of experiences bidding big projects, working in urban-like sites that I will explain when we get to some of our proposed recommendations, and just the expertise that we needed in order to conduct a deep dive into our facilities. So we're so happy to have DLA here tonight. Next, we have Jen, and Jen is our numbers girl. So Jen works with school districts through a company called PMTA. I'm getting used to the T being in there because they just did a merge. And ultimately, what they do is they support school districts in financing options. How do we, as a school district, receive money, and what does that look like, and what impact does it ultimately have then on the taxpayer? And so when we get to that portion, you will hear Jen speak directly. And last but certainly not least, we have Jim Hennessy. Jim, did you go to Southeast? He did. Look at that. We have an alumni in the house. I definitely knew that. So Jim, full circle, he went to Southeast, graduated from Central, and he's now our director of facilities. And so Jim really worked his way up the system, boots on the ground, doing all the big picture work. And now he leads our custodial department, which is obviously a big job, but he knows our facilities inside and out. So we're happy to have everyone here tonight, and we're gonna go ahead and get started on the presentation. So our bond informational session tonight is to provide, again, you all the information that you need to make an informed decision. And so we will do an overview of our stakeholder engagement. So that started 3 years ago, not tonight, not yesterday, but 3 years ago, really getting significant feedback from teachers, students, parents, community members, again, on how we can make a decision that's best meets the needs of our educational environment for kids. An overview of facilities needs, our proposed solutions, Illinois financing options for capital projects. By capital projects, I mean facilities. So how do we address the needs of our facilities? A review of our district website with a lot of additional information. And then we would typically do a tour of Central Middle School. Tonight, since we're housed at Southeast, we are going to do a tour of our mobile units. So we are recommending that we remove our 24-year-old mobile units. If you are interested in a tour of Central Middle School, I'm happy to set up any individual tours with me and members of my team, or we have an informational session next Wednesday in which you can come and we will take you on a tour of the building at that time. To start, our planning efforts completed to date. So strategic planning was something that we engaged in 3 years ago, and we're actually re-engaging in that process to really talk about what the goals of the district are. And at that time, we started to recognize as a district that we had a pretty significant concern regarding space. And so space continues to be a concern, particularly at our elementary schools, and that has to do with our aging mobile units that are 24 years old. We also did a facilities needs assessment that was conducted by our architect firm. A facilities needs assessment really involves our architects taking a deep dive into a 10-year life safety in terms of what do we need to fix, repair, and plan for in the future in terms of budgetary obligations. And so our architects have done that for us directly. Then we conducted very in-depth teacher and student surveys. We asked our kids, what do you want for your learning environment? And we talked to our teachers regularly on what their needs are in regards to their teaching environment and their needs to make the learning for students the most appropriate. Last, we conducted community surveys, and most recently in the spring, we had a very intense community engagement task force. And that citizen task force was comprised of a variety of community members that represented different groups. During that citizens task force was the time to which I brought proposals to community members and they weighed in on the decision-making process with me. And ultimately, I asked that community task force, what would you recommend that I test and survey in the larger community based on the information I presented to you? And the proposal that you will see tonight is what they recommended. They recommended that I survey and test the larger community on addressing the needs of the middle school, as well as renovations and additions at all 4 of our elementary schools. That includes the removal of our mobile units. So that is the proposal that you will hear tonight. Anticipated benefits. So what the Citizens Task Force told me is here's all the benefits that we see from this project and from this recommendation. We really talked significantly about health, life, safety, and student safety concerns in a world in which we have to talk about school safety. We talked about reducing overcrowding, investing in lasting solutions over costly quick fixes that ultimately impact the taxpayer. We talked about extending the useful life of our existing facilities, and you will see the age of our facilities, particularly Central, which is 98 years old. Enhancing ADA accessibility for particularly students with disabilities. Improving traffic flow and congestion. I don't have to talk to anybody in Evergreen Park about traffic. You all experience it. Again, especially around Central at times of arrival and dismissal. Ensuring all students have access to high quality education. Improving energy efficiency, because there's many ways that we can save the taxpayer dollar in terms of energy efficiency if we had the product and the modern technology to go along with it. Strengthening our ability to attract and keep teachers in a time that is really important. Protecting property values, so when you invest in schools, your property values ultimately increase. and expanding opportunities for community use of our school facilities, which would include you as community members having access to our schools. So before we go into details, it's really important to talk about what is a bond referendum, because that is what we essentially would be recommending. So the superintendent makes a recommendation to the Board of Education regarding a bond measure or a bond referendum to be placed on the ballot for a community vote based on stakeholder feedback. So the most recent thing that community members should have received in the mail, or maybe even a text message, was to complete the public opinion survey. Some of you might have received it, some of you may not have received it yet, but it's coming. We highly recommend that you complete the public opinion survey, because that piece of data is going to get the information that we need as a superintendent and a board to make a decision on what to put on the ballot for March of 2026. Voting would then take place for the community members on March 17th, okay? So that is the date of the primary election of March 2026. For a referendum to pass in Illinois, this requires 51% of voters to vote yes to the bond question listed on the ballot. So again, this is the time where I say, again, it is a community decision. I am solely here to provide you information. Like anything else in democracy, it is really up to the community. Referendum is really common practice in Illinois. It is very common. And I'm going to tell you and give you some examples. So Illinois schools, depending on your community, are driven by tax dollars. You live in Illinois. It does not matter what community you live in. A majority of schools are funded in between 67 and 75% by the taxpayer dollar. The remaining funding comes from either the federal government or the Illinois government, okay? And so when you go to complete a capital project and you need to receive funding to do so, it is very typical for a school district to ask the taxpayer to support them in their public school system. To provide you an example, in November of 24, that was the presidential election, there were 20 Illinois schools seeking approval to address capital projects ranging from anywhere from 20 million to 420 million. All of those referendum, I can tell you, in Illinois passed for a total cost of $1.5 million. And that's, again, to address the needs of capital projects. So to reiterate, it is very typical practice. District 124 last approved a bond measure for capital projects in 1970. That is how long ago a referendum was on the ballot to address capital projects, which is unfortunately a situation that I cannot address. I cannot go back in time and tell you, you should have addressed this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because I think you should have. The unfortunate thing about it is that the community did not. And so as a result, you are now in a position where the number might look larger than you want it to look, and I recognize that, and you know, I really do empathize with people who say, I simply cannot afford it. I get that entirely, but what I will tell you is that this problem is not going anywhere, and so it will always reside on the taxpayer. The total cost of that referendum was $1.25 million, and that was in 1970. So a little bit about our schools. So we have 4 elementary schools. Those 4 elementary schools, if you see the yellow dots, that's how old they are. So I'm going to start with Northwest. Northwest is 59 years old. It currently houses pre-K through 5th grade. Northeast is 76 years old. It currently houses pre-K through 5th grade. Southwest is 72 years old. It has preschool through 5th grade. And Southeast is 67 years old and houses kindergarten through 5th grade. And then Central Middle School is currently 98 years old, and it's had a number of renovations and additions that have ultimately left the building to be very disorganized and cluttered, and leads to a lot of additional issues that we're experiencing. A little bit about our enrollment. So our total enrollment to date is 1,734. Our middle school obviously has 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, and currently in a total enrollment of 561. Our elementary schools, we're really watching Northeast closely as it continues to increase. And ultimately, Northwest, our enrollment is the lowest, and that's the district quadrant to which the capacity is just, as you know, very landlocked. If you see an out-of-district number, we also support students with disabilities as we're required to by law. And so 65 of our students live in district but seeks services outside of district, which is a requirement for us. So if you've ever heard of like the Aero Therapeutic Center, we're a member of their cooperative. And so we do have students who attend that school building. Okay, so we're going to start with viewing a video to give you a deep dive into what our buildings currently look like.
Hi, I am Dr. Jenna Woodland, Superintendent of Evergreen Park School District 124. At District 124, we are committed to continuous improvement, especially when it comes to keeping our students and staff safe. Your input has been critical at every step as we explore how our buildings can better serve our Evergreen Park community. Built in 1927, CMS is nearly 100 years old, far beyond the 40-year lifespan of most public buildings. Our task force has highlighted critical safety concerns, including poor air circulation, a confusing layout, inadequate lighting, and deteriorating ceilings, all of which have potential to impact health, safety, and learning. The school's multiple unsecured access points and limited corridors make lockdown procedures and emergency management challenging. Accessibility is severely limited. Students with mobility needs encounter daily barriers navigating the building. Staff consistently report safety improvements like mirrors and enhanced lighting would help, but without a modern facility, these remain short-term solutions. A new middle school facility wouldn't just solve these issues, it would provide secure entry vestibules, optimized circulation, better visibility, accessible design, and infrastructure upgrades that create a learning environment with safety is fundamental. Additionally, the redesign would feature a safer, more efficient drop-off and pickup zone built around your feedback and dedicated to protecting our students and community. Our elementary schools house our youngest learners with students ranging from age 3 to 11. Currently, all 4 of our elementary schools are using mobile classrooms, which have been in place for nearly 25 years. These classrooms pose fire, structural, and general safety concerns, separating these students from our core buildings. Aging schools also suffer from outdated roofing, electrical and plumbing systems, and lack dedicated instructional spaces for modern learning and specialized programs for students with disabilities. Removing these mobile units and embracing permanent, consolidated spaces like a dedicated early learning hub at Northeast and expanded special education programming at Southeast not only enhances learning spaces, but improves supervision, emergency response, and educational access for all students in our community. Our community task force has proposed a building bond referendum for March 2026 to allow all voters to consider a new Central Middle School built to the highest safety standards, including secure entryways, modern fire alarms, better lighting, and design for emergency readiness. Consolidated, accessible elementary school environments with healthier indoor air quality, energy efficient systems, and physical layouts that foster visibility and reduce hazards. Renovations at our elementary schools would also include dedicated learning spaces for preschool, special education, art, music, and of course STEM. Additionally, all schools would have access to outdoor play spaces, a high priority that we heard from our staff, students, and parents throughout this process. The Planet Central Middle School would include modern learning spaces with learning hubs that provide access to student individualized learning, updated media center, a community access area with updated indoor tracks, and student performance areas for fine arts, and, of course, STEAM labs. Renovations at our elementary schools would also include the removal of our 25-year-old mobile units and the addition of spaces for preschool, special education, art, music, and STEAM. As a community, you may ask why now? Quick repairs can't replace long-term safety. Temporary patches merely waste financial resources and continue to pose risk to our students and staff. Upgrading our buildings would ensure that every student can learn in accessible, well-lit, and secure classrooms. Investments like these support safer school operations, stronger emergency preparedness, and help retain outstanding teachers and staff who want to work in well-maintained facilities. When schools are safe and modern, community pride and property values rise, alongside confidence in our district's educational system. We're planning community forums this fall and want you to come tour the buildings, learn about the bond proposal, and share your questions and input. You'll also receive informational mailers about options and safety improvements being considered. Together, we can ensure our schools, the true heart of Evergreen Park, are safe, welcoming, and ready for today's students and future generations. For more details and virtual building tours, please visit our website at d124.org/proposal.
Okay, now I'm going to go into detail around Central Middle School specifically. And so you heard a lot of different things, but I'm actually going to provide you with some examples. So our outdated electrical and plumbing. So in terms of questions that I've received, it's a lot of times, Dr. Woodland, why can't you do a renovation? Well, ultimately, when you have a building that is 100 years old, approaching 100 years old, what a renovation won't always fix is the internal needs of the building, like what's underneath. And not only that, when you start construction, then there's the anticipation of you might find even more concerns than what you previously knew about. So outdated electrical and plumbing. Our outdated HVAC and boiler system, which obviously impacts air quality control. We still have units in our classroom settings that ultimately impact noise and sound for students when they're being educated. So for example, I've had teachers complain to me, I've had students complain to me that they can't hear over the window units. At this time, Jim Hennessy is going to talk about the mechanics behind our HVAC units.
Hello. So, like Dr. Woodland said, with Central being so old, trying to retrofit that building, especially with HVAC, would be not financially responsible for us to do. There are so many old components in that building. Basically, every HVAC component you can think of, they have one at Central, and they're not all working. We have contractors come in, they're like, you need to do something. We can't even get parts to fix this anymore. Like she said, the window units, for the air conditioning, classrooms have a unit in the window, and then when it gets cold, they have a unit for the heat. We need to update. It saves so much more money if we were able to integrate the systems, all working together. We could set up automation where I could change temperatures from my computer if a teacher gets too cold. We're putting so many Band-Aids on everything over there, and it's getting to the point where we're running out of Band-Aids. The components are so old. I mean, there's literally 80-year-old components in the building that we're just trying to string along. So spending money to try to repair these things and keep Band-Aids on I think is a waste. We definitely need an upgrade.
Thanks, Jim. So we also have undersized, overcrowded corridors. And so what you'll see, particularly from the videos or if you're willing to take a tour, is because of the additions that were built over time, it's really led to a very inconsistent design for students. Oftentimes we have students, parents who come in and they can't even find their way or navigate around. When you think about middle school adolescent students who are essentially sometimes have a hard time keeping their hands to themselves to begin with, and then you put them in tiny corridors and expect them to behave, it really creates additional animosity and behaviors that obviously we don't want to see in a middle school environment. ADA accessibility issues. So I'm going to go into detail with this one because it is nearly frightening to me how out of compliance we are, particularly at Central. And so I will tell you that right now, and we have had in the past, students with disabilities who are either wheelchair bound, who obviously we're obligated and want to provide services to in their gen ed environment, who don't have the capacity or ability to get around the building in the way in which they should. And so there's a lift on one side of the building that allows the students to get down the stairs to the basement, but there is not a lift to support the student in getting out of the building. And so in the event of an emergency, a child who is wheelchair bound, if they're in the basement, we currently have 2 staff members that are trained to do a 2-person lift. And so that child is not currently able to freely exit or navigate the building willingly or appropriately. We do have 1 elevator in the building. The elevator this year, again, did not pass inspection. We were able to provide the updates that were needed to the elevator. However, just last week, that elevator broke again, and that student who is on a wheelchair, in order to receive physical therapy in the afternoon, we had to conduct the 2-person lift to get them to their services. And then we also have 6 other students who are currently they either have like a temporary medical disability. So for example, they broke their leg. That could happen to any child, right? And because the elevator was out of compliance on that day and we could not put students on the elevator, we had to conduct virtual learning in the library, and it's because they couldn't get to their classroom. I will tell you, no child should ever be in that situation in a public education setting, and it's unfortunate that we're at the point in which that is just truly a necessity in order for a child who does have a disability to be able to learn in their environment. So energy inefficient windows, so obviously this causes a lot of also like leaks and things in classrooms. You might have also heard people say that there's a musty or a mildew smell of the building. Again, I think that a lot of that has to do with age of the roof, different leaks that have occurred over time. You're also going to see that some of our classrooms upstairs still have carpeting, which obviously in terms of air quality is a large concern. I hold a parent advisory committee with parents who currently have students in the district. And I just had a parent who had a student who graduated 8th grade last year, and they're now at the high school. And this parent told me that her child consistently had like asthma concerns, allergy concerns when they were at Central. And now this year when they're at the high school, like no concerns whatsoever. And she just believes it has everything to do with the building itself. It's not clicking. Technology infrastructure, so obviously as technology updates, we want to be progressive with that, especially in a time where technology just becomes more and more accessible for students. Undersized and flexible classrooms. The classrooms are very small, again, especially for adolescent students. Traffic and parking challenges. So parking has really led us to a place where, again, it just leads for inconsistencies and a lack of parents being able to drop off their students and pick them up in a manner that's convenient and also safe. Outdated, insufficient lighting and significant lack of lighting. I have had students, especially when I talk about the cafeteria at Central, they literally have told me, like, Dr. Woodland, this feels like a prison. And it's because there is such significant lack of light, which obviously does impact learning. There's our cafeteria that's in the basement. So we conduct all of our food service internally. So all of our food is prepared at Central, and then it's delivered to all of our elementaries. So it's a full-size kitchen. Our architects have really made note, though, that there's a lot of insufficient space that's occurred there as a result. Obviously, you can see the lack of natural light in the cafeteria. We also have many students who complained about the sound and the noise because it wasn't built to hold the number of students that are currently in that building. Outdated, deteriorating flooring, ceiling, interior door frames, hardware. And then last, aging running track, which I would really just classify as a painted track on asphalt. So now we're going to watch a virtual tour of Central Middle School. Okay, next I'm going to go into an overview of our facility needs at our elementary schools. So we have 24-year-old mobile classrooms. These mobile classrooms were meant to be temporary in nature. They were never meant to last the 24 years. And to explain a little bit about structure in terms of hierarchy in a school district, so our district is located in South Cook, and we report to the Regional Office of Education. And every year, the Regional Office of Education has to conduct permits of our buildings and inspections of them. And every year, since I've been here, the Regional Office of Education has said to us, Dr. Woodland, Jim, Eric, you need to put together a plan to get rid of them. They are past their life shelf. You should not be using them. They're not safe for kids. And ironically, the district bought them used. So not only are they 24 years old, they were purchased used. And now I'm going to tell you the horrible story that you don't want to hear about student safety. So in August, approximately 2 years ago August, you can never really predict kindergarten enrollment. And we had a spike in enrollment that we weren't expecting or anticipating because it's somewhat hard to track. You have new kindergartners who move in, and we had to open a section of kindergarten in one of our elementary buildings. And thankfully, the mobiles have two sides, so two classrooms. And on the one side of the mobile would have been the kindergarten classroom. And on the other side of the mobile in the evening, a custodian was cleaning and they heard a noise on the other side of the mobile. Thankfully, that custodian called the police. And the police responded because we have an exceptional law enforcement here, and there was someone who had broken in to the other side of the mobile. I want you to picture a group of kindergartners walking into that mobile, or the classroom teacher walking into that mobile the next morning. They are not secure, they are not safe, they should not still be intact. I additionally have extreme concerns regarding severe weather. It is not uncommon, and ultimately, yes, we have procedures in place, but what you can't plan for is the unpredictable. As much as a school district can plan, they cannot plan for the unpredictable. So I just want to make you really aware that no district should have mobile units, especially in today's world, and we should really look to discontinue their use. Here's another example. We also have storage units. Those are, again, just because of lack of storage in our elementary buildings. We have classes on carts at our elementary buildings, so essentially art, music, technology are on carts due to lack of space. Project Tree, which is our gifted and accelerated and then special education pull-out. We also have our EL multi-language students in many of our buildings that conduct pull-out into our mobiles. We also have accessibility concerns at our elementary buildings. So behind you, you will see a stage. And so a lot of times in our elementary buildings, they'll conduct like physical therapy for students on the stage. And that's, again, because they don't have designed occupational therapy settings. And it's, again, because we're at capacity. There's people sharing offices. These rooms, like right behind you, are actually meant to be storage units, but they're really for office space, and it's, again, because we just don't physically have the space for the capacity of which we're at. We're lacking outdoor play space for kids. We have many, many shared pull-out spaces. This is an example of in the inside of a mobile, and a lot of times there's multiple employees who are sharing that space. This is actually the conference room here at Southeast. Again, because we don't have room for the conference room, we actually have just a table located in the library. And on the days that they have meetings with parents, they actually have to close the library in order to hold those confidential meetings. This is our shared pull-out space, shared office space. And now we're going to watch a video of our elementary buildings. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to go over programming recommendations that came from that citizens task force and all that feedback that we got from our stakeholder groups. So this addresses our pre-K programming needs district-wide, special education programming, including addressing ADA accessibility concerns, and then also facilities needs based on community input, space, art, music, and technology on a cart, our aging 100-year-old middle school. So we are recommending a new central middle school. And the main reason why is because you can't continue, or we don't believe you can continue, nor do our architects, our construction manager, the experts that we've hired, continue to put a Band-Aid on a problem that is just so large at this point. And ultimately, those Band-Aids are only going to result in quick fixes that are going to continue to increase the taxpayer dollar long term. So I'm going to go into the specifics of what that looks like. If I can, the next slide. Okay. So the proposed 3-story middle school would be facing 95th Street. It would be a 3-story building. Our building is currently 3 stories, but the difference is that it would be at ground level to assist, again, with ADA accessibility concerns, along with modern environments, multiple elevators, things of that nature. I've had questions from community members, like, why would you put a building back to a busy street? Like, isn't that dangerous? And I want to address that question. So right now, we have a wire fence back to 95th Street. And during PE, during planned, I'm going to say like recess, we don't have recess at Central every day, but if they do planned outside activities, we currently have kids who play here. And all that's blocking them is a wire fence at this point. So again, if a car were to come quickly off of 95th Street, it would create much more concern for me than it would having a modern, brand new building. Our architects can also address putting additional like rock structures here to increase safety. And again, the 3-story building would be at ground level. If you see up here, this is like the red is the outlay of our current and existing building. And so when we were addressing needs, we were really taking into consideration a couple of different things. So Evergreen Park, as you know, is currently very landlocked. There is no land, we looked, trust me, like we looked, there is no land available to buy. And what we didn't want to do is purchase new property that would then add to cost. And so we really charged our architects with saying, can we build and what can we build on the property to which we already own? And so it is a very common practice, and I'm going to ask Peter to come up and talk about how they build on like an urban site, because you might be concerned about that. And so Peter's going to talk about how that's common practice.
Thank you, Dr. Woodland. So pushing the building to the south side of the site, closer to 95th, one of the things we think about whenever we're designing a new building is how is the existing building going to remain in operation? How long is the duration of the construction? That could be 10 months, a year, or more, depending on the phases that we're going to work with the construction manager to lay out. But certainly one of the concerns here, that not insurmountable, but certainly we've taken that into account, when we're figuring out the design, is how does the new building wrap around the existing building in such a way that it can be built without disturbing the existing operations of the school. And I think it just so happens that this particular property and your building is central, is well suited for that. And as Dr. Woodland mentioned, having the building kind of face the busy street and shielding all the students in play, actually really, this design really works to accomplish that. So.
It's typical that you build.
Oh yes, yeah, it's very common that we have, you're actually very lucky to have the space to be able to fit this 3-story building. So it does work out, it is very advantageous, but certainly if you didn't have this, then you may have to be forced looking at a new property, which you mentioned there are none. So yes, very fortunate, worked out in your favor. We've got a base plan going that we think is really a winner.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so the other thing that this design really addresses is parking as well as traffic flow. So typically, as you know, traffic flow goes around the building, which really creates a lot of congestion. The new model addresses that by doing a drop-off inside, which would really assist in flow, congestion, things that have been directly brought to our attention as well. So again, this is just another layout. Again, this is the 3-story building. This is 95th Street. And then here's the existing structure. We also have 3D dimensional designs that our architects have put together. So this is the gymnasium that also doubles as an auditorium. We don't currently have an auditorium, and it's something that our students have really requested in order to be able to put on theatrical productions. A learning courtyard, the track that you will see outside that is designed for outdoor activities. Here you can see the drop-off area that again faces inside, shielding students from any additional traffic flow. The interior cafeteria, and then we have 36 classrooms and 7 science labs. And then we are recommending a majority of our special education classrooms being downstairs to again assist with accessibility. Oops, I skipped one. Okay. So the library is also state-of-the-art in terms of addressing educational needs for kids, a place that they could study, do before and after school activities. This is also the fitness center that we currently have a fitness center, but it also would address the needs of the fitness center. And the board is strongly considering community access before and after school to allow for community members to access the gym, to access the fitness center, and hopefully free of cost as well. And this is the 3rd floor. Again, you'll see science labs, additional classrooms, and then this would be the STEAM lab. Here's a conceptual rendering. That's the rear exterior of the building with additional parking. This is not 95th. Eric or Jim? Sawyer. Okay, next page. Conceptual rendering of our courtyard and the front entrance. Cafeteria. The gym and auditorium. Library, again for before and after school activities, a lot of engaged activities during the school hour. Okay, so now I'm going to go into specifics with Northwest. Again, just to reiterate what Peter said, which I think is really important, one of our large considerations is how do we continue to educate kids while doing construction, which is also one of the main reasons with Central we were recommending a new building. You don't want to get into, again, paying for mobile units to still educate students while renovation is going on. And ultimately, our renovation model, one of them would include outsourcing food service, which is not a position that we wanted to be in because obviously that's a high priority for the community. So our Northwest Hello? Oh, I just turned it on and off. I did the good old-fashioned trick. Okay, so Northwest is obviously our building that is the most landlocked, so we did not have a lot of space to be able to build. And so as a result of that, we still needed to address the removal of the mobiles, as well as getting art, music, and STEM off of a cart, and renovating particular spaces. And so our STEM lab would still be addressed with renovations. We would add some student support services spaces. We would remove the mobile. We would have an additional restroom space because the restrooms are not accessible right now for kids. They're on operating ends of the building. additional storage, and then we also are recommending some additional renovations to the front foyer of Northwest. As a result of that, we are recommending moving some of our programming to Northeast and Southeast, because those are the two portions of our quadrant that have the most land to which we can build on. So when we look at Northeast, our renovations and additions would include a proposed early learning addition with a specific, and I've gotten a question about this, parent drop-off and parking. So it would come in the back, not again on the busy streets. An early childhood play center that's specific to a grant that we receive for preschools. So when you have preschool funding through federal grant dollars, you have to have a specialized preschool play center. And then a soft surface play center for our kindergarten through 5th grade students. This would also address the needs of our bilingual programming, which is expanding at a pretty rapid rate at Northeast. And so being able to expand that programming was a need based on programming needs as well as requests from our community. Here's a 3-dimensional design, or I'm sorry, a 2-dimensional design that this shows the Northeast. This is the parking lot with a particular pre-KK drop-off area, and then the yellow is the addition. This is the soft surface play area, and this is the soft surface play area for preschool. Southeast Elementary School is the other building to which we have the most land to build on. And so because of that, we are recommending moving some of our very restrictive special education programming. And so creating cohesive special education programming has been a really large request from our parents in terms of consistency and what that looks like. And so that programming would go here at Southeast. And we would also get art, music, STEM off of a cart. We would increase space for a conference room, which they currently don't have. The assistant principal's office is located outside of the corridor, which is very odd, and so it would give an assistant principal an office space, and again, a soft surface playground. And here's the 2-dimensional design that you can see where the addition would go in the back of the building. Again, obviously removing the mobiles. And last is Southwest Elementary School. So Southwest, we are recommending the proposed addition to remove the mobile to add the space that's needed to replace what's currently in the mobile, as well as getting art, music, STEM off of a cart, and adding the soft surface playground. Here's the 2D model of where the addition would go. Okay, at this time, Eric Grossi is going to talk about where the district receives funding.
Hi, how's it going? This first slide shows our revenue from fiscal year 24, which is the 2023-2024 school year. And this shows how much of an impact the local taxes impact our revenues. If it wasn't for you local taxpayers, we would not be able to operate as a school district. That's just something, the way of Illinois' financing, that's how it works, unfortunately. This is our fiscal year 24 expenditures, so 2023-2024 again. It shows salaries and benefits take about 72% of our total expenditures, and of those 72%, roughly 60% of our employees live in this district. So the money is actually going back to the community, which is good, and it's really important as well because we serve students, and it's important for that. This is our revenues and expenditures over the last 8 years. You'll notice that in 2024 we had a $1 million surplus, and a question that I received earlier is in the 2021 to 2023 area, you'll see a spike in the expenditures, And that's as a result of inflation, plus there was a gap of roughly 8 years where the district didn't do any construction. So the construction plus the cost of, insurance increases, plus the cost of any supplies or material or purchase service for any of the students has gone up. So that is what that red line is represented by. This slide shows our fund balance history. Dr. Woodland covered this a little bit earlier. The board's goal is a 6-month reserve, and it's important, right now Cook County is delayed with taxes, for example, so it's important that we have this fund balance so we don't have to go out and borrow money from banks so that we could pay our payroll and function as a school district. And so we have reached that goal of 6 months in 2022, and at this moment, like Dr. Woodland said, we're a little bit over 7 months of fund balance reserves. And now we have Jen from PMTA to talk about the tax impact.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Dr. Woodland. So in order to finance these projects, this new building, the improvements at the elementary schools, the amount of bonds that the district would be asking the community to allow them to issue in order to finance these projects is $109.8 million. Burning question is, what does that mean for you as a taxpayer, right? So first off, one of the underlying assumptions is that this $109 million would be repaid over a long period of time. This is over 30 years. That is the statutory maximum for a school bond like this. It also makes a lot of sense, especially when there's a new building and heavy renovations being done to existing buildings, that 30 years compared to the average life of that new building, the building should exceed that 30-year repayment. It also spreads the burden so that families that haven't yet moved in, but will in 5, 10, 15 years, they also share some of the burden of repaying the cost of this large project. So over the 30 years, we estimate that principal and interest, also known as debt service, cost would total, hold on to my back, okay, $224.1 million over the 30 years. So the average annual debt payment would be about $7.7 million. Now these numbers assume a true interest cost or a borrowing rate of 5.22%. That is a bit conservative. If you had to issue these bonds today all at once, we would estimate that that rate would be just under 5%, so these numbers would ultimately be lower, but we can't predict or guarantee what that market's going to look like when it comes time to issue the bonds. So we prefer to be a little bit conservative for purposes of the referendum question. In terms of tax rate, that amounts to 1.22, and to answer that burning question, the $109.8 million bond measure would ultimately cost about $33.98 for every 100,000 of a home's fair market value per month. Specifically for a $300,000 home, to give you a precise example, that would be $91.77 per month. Now, I stressed fair market value because that is different than the market value you may think of your home being worth. Like if you look on Zillow and what they say the value of your home is, or what you could sell it for tomorrow, may not be and probably isn't what the assessor says your property value is. And so it's really important to look up what that property value or fair market value is when estimating what that impact will be for you or any particular homeowner. And so how do you determine that? Well, this is an example of an assessment notice that the assessor sends out at least every 3 years, because in Cook County there's a triennial reassessment, and so there's one particular year every 3 years where there will be a larger increase in that estimated market value. So what's highlighted here is this is what that assessment notice from the county looks like. What's highlighted is the estimated market value. So this example is $280,000, and that is the number that you can apply as the property value or fair market value when trying to predict what that estimated impact will be for you as an individual homeowner. So here we have an example what that assessment notice looks like directly from the Cook County Assessor's website. So if you were to click on that link, then this from the assessor's website, if you scroll down just a little bit, there's also an example of what that assessment notice looks like and what a tax bill looks like. If you have your most recent tax bill, there will be a property value on it. In fact, that's even better than the last assessment notice, which you probably received back in 2023. And so that last tax bill will have a property value on it that the assessor uses to calculate your tax bill. That would be the number that you want to apply to that rate of 1.22 that I mentioned on the other slide. The assessor's website also has a lot of information on how they assess your home and how tax bills are calculated if you're interested in that as well. But going back to that presentation, on the next slide, we can click on that link as well, please. Thank you. This is a calculator. I believe it's available on the district's website as well. Here is where you can plug in that property value or fair market value from that assessment notice or your most recent property tax bill. So if you were to plug in $300,000 and hit that update button, thank you, we didn't practice this, so I appreciate your help. If you scroll down, you'll see that the monthly impact matches what we had on that other slide, which is the $91.77. So scrolling down a little more, thank you. Then from this calculator, you'll get the annual impact as well as that monthly impact that we quoted on that other slide. And so what this calculator does is it assumes it automatically applies a $10,000 homeowner exemption, which most homeowners, if not all within the district, would qualify for. There are other exemptions that you may qualify for as an individual homeowner. And so toward the top, there is an area where you can say yes to certain other exemptions and be able to see a more accurate representation of what that tax impact would look like for you. Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So it is super important. Obviously, we want to make this really applicable to every single person individually, what impact it means for you. So we highly recommend, don't look on Zillow, don't look on Redfin, go to your actual tax document or go to the website. I've walked many people through it. If you want to come in my office, Eric can meet with you, I can meet with you. There's also a handout that we gave tonight, I believe, that explains how to do it, and it's also located on our website. Quick. Yes. Sorry. Looks like this. This has directions. It's also located on our website, and it has a little video that you can watch at the bottom with a QR code, and it shows you how to look up your value on the Cook County Assessor's website. Again, as Jen referred to, that's important too, because your bill that you actually have might be from 2024. And if you want the most recent up-to-date assessed value, it will have the 2025 value on the website. Okay, so at this time, I have had a number of people ask about why now. So if you remember, the last time the district went to a referendum was 1970. And what I can't do is I can't change what happened in the past. But what I can tell you is that the cost of this project is only getting bigger. It is not going to get any smaller, and that burden will always be on the taxpayer because you live in Illinois. It is just that simple. And so when Eric and I first started, what ultimately happened is we looked at the cost of a new middle school, and that was 4 years ago. And we got a quote from our prior architect. We no longer have them, but that quote was for $50 million, and that was 4 years ago. And today, our quote for a new middle school, because of inflation, because of tariffs, because of unpredictable labor markets, it's currently 74.9. And that is just true, factual inflation. Things are not getting cheaper. They are only getting more expensive. And ultimately, it will continue to be a concern, especially when I talk about the middle school, because it is 100 years old. Now I'm going to talk to you about Lockport High School, because this is a true story. So Lockport High School, they went out for referendum and it failed. Fine, community decision. Community didn't want the referendum. They didn't want the new building. Totally get it. It was an aging freshman center. They had ceilings in their building collapse when kids were in the building. And then ultimately what they had to do is bus kids from Lockport to Lincoln Way in order for those freshman students to get their education. And then they had to go out for an emergency bond to pay for it. And it was ultimately, again, the result of an issue that needed to be resolved that just unfortunately wasn't resolved. I will tell you, my nephew was in the building when that happened. It is really scary to think about, and again, these are things that unfortunately do happen, and we want to make sure that we are providing you, again, all the information that you need to make an informed decision. At this time, we had a couple community members who were on our task force who are here tonight. So George Peso, he was on our task force, and so he's going to come up and say a couple things. And then we're going to hear from Rachel Merquin, who's our board member. Hi, George.
Good evening. Hope this doesn't go off on me. Well, there's one little phrase that you guys should remember, that the foundation of every city or Hello. Okay. I'm sorry. Seems like we have a microphone problem lately in all the meetings. Well, whatever. Okay. There's one little phrase that I want you to remember, that the foundation of every school, every city or town or village is its quality of education. That means that if you have a bad school district, your town is not going to be that great. You'll have people leaving away, going to other areas and so forth. Now, what is the question when a lot of new couples, they get married, they want to move around a little bit? Oh, do they have good schools here? You know, how are the stores and everything? They want to really know what's going on. So that's the thing you got to watch for. Basically, you know, you're investing in the future of our children. That's what you're doing by paying taxes, and plus a lot of other things as well. But in order for a town to live, you have to educate your children so that they'll carry on what you have left behind. Now, this is just my opinion. As an architect, I mean, I'm not going to be going against Peter here. He does a great job. His job is a complete science to design for a school. He's done a great job. I love his design, what he came up with, and it's beautiful. And as far as traffic was concerned, well, my wife is a crossing guard. And basically, if you talk to a lot of the crossing guards here in the village, they'll tell you about what traffic is all about. And, you know, it's amazing. But the whole problem is the drivers. That's the thing. You've got some crazy drivers out there. Because my wife has to handle that every year, that she's a crossing guard. And in all kinds of weather. Now, my little opinion is this: when it's the Evergreen Park. Now, I'm also the co-founder of the Evergreen Park Historical Commission, which I don't know how many people have visited us, but I don't want this to sound like a commercial time, but we're at 9547 on Holman, and we're open to the public first and third Saturdays from 10 o'clock till 3 o'clock. So come visit us. You'll learn a little bit about your village. Anyway. In 1875, Evergreen Park had a schoolroom built, which was four-room school building, rather, and it lasted till 1927. And in 1927, there was a brand new school built called Central. Now, it took a couple of years for Central to be built at that time, so the kids transferred over into Central that you know today. But because back then, the design attitude was a little bit different. There were not standards that we had to have today. In fact, as I was growing up, because I came to Evergreen here in '55, and basically growing up through the years, I actually came through a lot of development of standards. That's why, for instance, you've got doors that are 30 inches wide, 3 foot wide. They're all standards today. And you've got better building codes. I don't even know what building codes were around at that time. I wasn't around. I'm not that old. I'm only 82, so whatever. But anyway, the design quality of Central, in my opinion, was not that great. But it satisfied status quo. Because at the time I graduated from Central in '57, it was status quo. But as technology came in, more children came in, then you begin to have problems. And of course, age adds to the building. And basically, things wear out, codes are upgraded. You have to satisfy one code versus another. And like I said, the whole design process was wrong in those days. Yes, there are some buildings that are 100 years old and plus that still are very useful. Well, why? They were designed correctly with a lot of space and so forth. But Central itself, there's a lot of things that are wrong in there. I, as a veteran, I attend a veterans breakfast every year. My fellow veterans do find it difficult going up and down the stairs. But, you know, it's the way it is. But you really have to change this building. I mean, we have a crisis as far as Central is concerned. Yes, you have a crisis on the outline, but not as serious as Central. Central's going to be, in 2 more years, 100 years old. The other schools, as Jenna pointed out, you saw their ages. Now, we want to get a brand new building because, number one, the attitude of the kids will increase. The teachers' attitudes will increase. But I would recommend everybody take a tour of Central. Check out the one room that they have, that in order to go through that room to your other classroom, you have to go through it, which is ridiculous. Of course, there's a favorite spot that Jenna has called the dungeon. She'll show you that one. But anyway, you know, just take that tour. It's well worth it. I mean, I've heard people say, oh, you don't need a new school. Well, they're the individuals who just look at a solid building outside, and they don't even know what's inside. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, I can't understand those comments. It shows just a lack of knowledge or interest or anything. I don't know what it is. But I know a lot of us don't have the kids in schools, but it's an investment in where you live. As long as you're breathing and living in this town, invest in it. That's the best investment you're going to get. So I thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from Rachel Mariquin.
I'm gonna scoot over. I wrote notes because, you know, I'm a teacher and I tend to talk too much. So, good afternoon or evening. I'm still in daytime. All right, so as a parent, a teacher, and a board member, and a member of this community, I wanted to share why I am supporting the referendum to build a new school. My own children won't even benefit from it. My oldest is already in high school, as Jenna said earlier. My youngest is in 6th grade. So this isn't about my kids. It's about the children who will come after them, the students who deserve a learning environment that makes it exciting for them to come to school every day. The referendum isn't just about building a new middle school. It's about getting rid of the mobile classrooms at our elementary schools and creating some extra space so those schools can have dedicated rooms for STEAM, art, music. I'm sorry, but art on a cart or music on a cart doesn't do it for me. Those subjects aren't extras. They're essentials. Students need to be immersed in classrooms filled with the tools and materials that help them create, explore, and learn. And as everyone's been saying today, if you've never stepped foot in the current middle school, I truly suggest you schedule a walkthrough. Those videos don't do it justice. I think it would change your mind. Go down into the basement where, you know, you see the lunchroom and some classrooms. And the lunchroom, like people said, it feels like a prison. And honestly, it has a terrible smell. My daughter even said that. I'm like, no, it smells fine. It smells fine. You know, trying to be positive. And I also feel for anyone that needs to get anywhere in a wheelchair because the layout is far from accessible. And just even hearing what Jenna was saying earlier, it's saddening. And my favorite example, if you could call it that, and you mentioned that as well, is how you have to walk through a classroom to get to another hallway, to get to another classroom. The hallways are crowded, they're not safe. Like I said, my older daughter went there, my younger daughter's there now. The teachers are doing the absolute best they can with what they have, and they're incredible. But no matter how great teachers are, it doesn't change how the students feel when they're learning in a space that feels like a dungeon, dark, cramped, musty. You hear the same words over and over from many people. Imagine the same students walking in a building with natural light, bright colors, air that actually smells clean, heat that works, air conditioning that works, don't hear that buzzing and loud noise in the background. It changes everything. It changes their mood, their energy, how they see the school. I compare it to like a restaurant, I know restaurants so different from a school, but if a restaurant serves the same exact food, okay, same exact food. One is dark, smells funny, feels old. Okay, the other one's bright, colorful, inviting. Obviously, you know where you're gonna go, and but the concept is the same when you're talking about that. It makes a difference what you're walking into. I teach in a different district. I'm a STEAM teacher, STEM teacher, and luckily about 10 years ago, we received a grant to build new STEAM labs. So the students love coming to my class. It's not because of me, really. It's because the room is bright, colorful, has new technology, the seating's cool, they could sit backwards on their chairs and stuff, It really makes a difference. It changes their attitudes. I could be saying the ABCs up there, they're excited about coming into that room. Even parents, when they come in, oh, this room's great. Why aren't the other rooms like this? Well, So my family, we're not rich. We don't have a ton of money, but we deeply care about the community and the future of our children. When I looked up how the referendum would impact me, I did the online tool because I was trying to figure out how to do it. And actually, I realized it wasn't as much as I thought at my house. I said, I spend way more money going out to eat with my husband, like in one day, for what the monthly cost is. I pay more going out to eat. Maybe I should go out to eat less, I don't know. But this investment is way more than, going and having a nice dinner. A new middle school and better spaces for our elementary schools are not just buildings, they're a promise. They show that we believe in our children, our teachers, the future of Evergreen Park. It's time to stop putting Band-Aids on old problems and start building something better. The future is our children, and not just our own, but the children of the community, future children who will one day call Evergreen Park their home. So again, I fully support the referendum and hope you could see how important this is as well.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Okay, last but not least, so we have a variety of different ways that you can ask questions, but what we're really trying to do is keep track of all of the questions. So you will see them on our website, any FAQ, all the information located on our website. If you like technology a little bit more, you can scan the QR code. It will take you to a Google form. You can ask any questions. I will get back to you directly. They will also be listed on our website. And then you also, if you'd prefer paper, you can submit the paper to me directly tonight. We are, again, just trying to keep track of all of our questions in order to be able to answer them appropriately to everyone. And then the panel will be up here tonight, and you can schedule an appointment with me directly, or we will happily stick around to answer any questions that you have. If you are interested in seeing the mobile in person, we're gonna take you outside as well. So anyone who would like to see the mobile in person, please stick around and we will take you out there. So thank you so much for coming out, and if you have any other questions, we are here to answer them. Thank you so much.